Well, welcome to Did She Really Say That? A podcast that's interviewing extraordinary women in the business world that are saying, nope, things need to be done a little differently. And I'm super excited for our conversation today because, ladies, it's time to change things up. I have brought in the amazing Benita Conde, is the founder of Create Radical Love, a life coaching and consulting approach for people who want to radically love their whole life experience. Not just those one or two areas of your life. Benita has been in the advertising industry as an executive for over 20 years, experiencing and supporting guiding careers of creative people. Like, she loves creative people. How many of you out there are creatives? I hope a lot of you. Um, she held leadership roles in resources. She held leadership roles in resource management, project management, recruiting, and talent development at agencies such as Fallon, New York, BBH, New York, and Anomaly, New York, and led creative recruiting for North America at a global executive placement firm, The Talent Business. Benita has experience and studied coaching process as a client and has been sober for over 18 years. Her first professional role was that of a classical ballet dancer. Woohoo! There's a lot of discipline in that and her devotion for that. She loves the choreographical movement, the creative collaboration, and the passion, and how she brings that into her business. You really want to listen into this conversation as we go into this. Back in July of 2017, Benita left that agency and jumped into an unknown, launching this business, Create Radical Love, in October of 2017. She works with a diverse group of individuals globally on holistic coaching, guiding the clients with a deep intuition, defining a calling, and having them take action that aligns and excites them. Do you feel the drudgery of your day coming through? Yep, that might be true. But she's here to help you create a whole new life. She works with creative businesses, educational institutions, and industry groups as a coach, consultant, workshop facilitator, and speaker. In addition, she co hosts an amazing podcast, What We Know, What We Don't. There is nothing that lights her up more than seeing people step into their true excitement, their true fulfillment, and watch them wake up to what is infinitely possible for themselves and their businesses. I am so honored to have you here, Benita. This is such a great conversation. When we kind of had our first meet and greet, we talked about, that deep need to create movement and choreography and feel in our bodies how business goes, especially as women. So I kind of want to dive into this entire question and, just first off, say hello to our audience. So it's just an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Katrina. My pleasure to be here.
So let's dive into this. So one of the things that we talked about was intuition. Now,
hmm
a lot of time that gets a little woo for women. It's like, because they can't define it. It's like this gut feeling. So let's talk about really what intuition is.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can feel like this more ethereal or harder to define experience in life, but there are really clear definitions of it. So,
Okay.
one definition that I love is our sensory messaging, a knowing, a sense of um, a way to assess a situation, a sensory way to assess situations versus relying solely on cognitive, rational, quote unquote, thought, right? Like, oh, my mind is telling me I should just make this decision for these reasons on paper. But, my body is telling me, my gut is telling me, I'm like moving away when I'm in conversations about this opportunity. I'm not feeling right, it's not sitting right. There's that intuitive sense that something's maybe not aligned for me, but it looks great on paper for all the reasons, so I'm just going to do it. And I cannot tell you in my own life, and now working with 500 plus more clients and supporting thousands of people over the years of my career, how many times people have then come to me and said, or I have noticed in my own life, like, oh, I knew that this was not aligned. I knew this was not right. There were signs, there were other senses of feeling, there were, I was resisting in some ways, but I did it anyway. And those are really tactical, evidence based moments that we can look back on and say, oh, it's very important for me to bring the two together. So that's really what I work with clients on is, of course we need our mind. Of course we need to practically and rationally think about things and look at the actual details and take actions and go from point A to point B to point C. But in the process of doing those, what information are we gathering from the other aspects of our senses?
Okay.
So, how is it feeling? Did we get the chills when we were speaking to somebody because it actually felt so aligned and so inspired and like, oh, wow, this feels really actually right. But maybe the money's a little bit less than I would normally consider. But there's aspects of this that feel really fulfilling and inspiring. Like, oh, if I put all of those components together and look at it from what I call a true value perspective rather than the aspects that the mind tends to focus on from like a safety and security perspective only,
Yeah.
I find then we're looking at a whole total picture of the information that we're actually assessing. So the sensory messaging aspects of considering information, and then the mind, thought, cognition aspects.
Do you find, I think even for myself, there were times that I've been in different incidences, different businesses, different, corporate backgrounds and stuff where we as women like really suppress that intuition, where we're not
Massively.
listening to it. Do we do it more so than the men, or are we about equal between the two?
Well, I think we're conditioned to operate more like men
Okay.
who may not, right? And this, I'm not, an anthropologist or a neurologist or, studying the intersection of the roles that we've played over the course of history. And so what
Right.
leads us to maybe have a deeper well of connection to our intuition than men from a needing to keep the peace and keep communities together and, read facial uh
Non-facial
signs,
cues. Yes.
yeah, right, and like really understand like what's happening in a room, right? We're really asked to quiet a lot of that
Yeah.
in corporate business worlds that have been predominantly male dominated because that might not be the stylistic leadership approach historically in those environments. So I think we're really conditioned, there's lots of language around, oh, don't be too sensitive, and don't raise emotional concerns. This is just about the facts, or this is just about the data, or this is just about, what we need to do financially at this moment. So let's not consider the human element. And I think there's just a lot of conditioning and messaging that tells us that we should not listen to those aspects of ourselves.
Yeah, I think the phrase that popped up in my mind is there's no crying, right? So don't cry,
Absolutely.
don't
Right.
feel
Yeah. Don't be
this
human,
yeah,
basically,
don't
is
yeah, just we've gone really analytical with a lot of stuff. It's like we want the data and the numbers and that's the truth, and whatever you feel is completely out, like just remove that completely. I did have one other question that kind of popped up, and since you were a ballet dancer, did
mhm.
intuition play a lot for you even in your performances and just embodying the music and the choreographical piece of it? Was that sometimes an intuitive piece, or yeah, so you're lighting up about this. Tell me a little
Massively.
more.
Yeah. I mean, it's an artistic art, it's a form of art. So you're creating both technically with the skills that you're learning, but then there is that individual expression depending on the
Mm,
role that you're portraying or the particular piece that you're dancing or something that's being choreographed, right? You're bringing your own interpretation to that. And that all is creative expression. And that comes from intuition, right? And where there's like a space allowed for individual expression within the framework again of the technique and the steps. So yeah, it's massively a huge component of that experience.
yeah, and I would say when you guys listen to Benita as we continue this conversation, like bring that in because there is something that she has been embodied with around intuitively, like knowing her body, knowing its limits. And I think that really gives you credibility also in when you're coaching and working with your clients and in the workshops you host because you've embodied it at such a deep level. And to be able to bring that forth and help other women and other men out there in the world, like I really commend you for that because that is
Thank you.
like taking a skill set that you've developed and bringing it into a different space. So thank you for that.
And that's followed me throughout. Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. Yeah, I moved from the ballet world when I left that career at 22 into the fitness industry. So that's when it started to the connection between, and I was working in a chain of health clubs. So there was a more corporate dynamic in that environment compared to me working in ballet companies and Broadway show tours and things like that. that then I started to see how I could bridge the intuitive choreographic, like, oh, this is how a group of people moves together in a more corporate setting. And then that moved me forward into working in advertising agencies.
I would love to be deep in your mind because I can only picture that everything is like a musical movement in your head, like a choreographed,
Lots of
like
movement. Yeah.
world of movement. Like you're kind of seeing not only yourself in it, but how everybody else is moving around you because you've got that sense of stage. So I would say that's definitely like a key factor of your brilliance, just being able to be present who you are and still feel the space around you. So I
Thank
love
you.
that we're talking the intuition. So when it comes into this, a lot of us as women specifically, we struggle with both the balance and the weaving of life. How do we create the life we love in a world where we feel like we don't have a voice? So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of how you bring that conversation forward.
Absolutely. So in my own life, I brought the very disciplined, hardworking, you could call it, A-type driven elements from being a ballet dancer all the way through my career.
Mm,
And I got to a point in 2017 where I was working at a highly respected advertising agency, leading a creative department that grew from like about 70 people to 100 people over the course of the year and a half that I was there. On paper, it all looked great. At that point, I have one child, and my son was like 6, 7 at the time. And it was that pull, right? I was working, you work long hours in
yeah.
highly paced, competitive, dynamic environments. And I knew that was going to be the case. I'd worked in agencies many times in my life. And I'd come from a recruiting firm where there was just a little bit of a different pace. So I knew I was going back into a more intensely paced world. And the pull of those dynamics of wanting to do very well professionally and also be a great mom and show up and be there also for my husband and family and friends. I really came to a point where I was like, wow, this formula is is broken. Like it doesn't work as a formula. I feel like I'm sort of giving 80% maybe in both places, and that didn't feel right. So that was a sensory experience. My
Mm.
body did not feel right. It did not feel well in those pulls, but my mind was saying, well, but this is just how it is. Like you just got to
That's the
deal.
tolerance level, right? Like you're just tolerating it and you're
Tolerating and not
doing it,
loving
but
life.
not
Yeah.
loving it for yourself. Yeah, I hear
And
that. And
it
I think
not
a lot of
feeling
women resent,
aligned.
yeah, and I think a lot of women hear that and they go, I feel the same.
Right. And this message of like, well, but this is just how it is. So I guess I just have to deal. And I should feel lucky to be here and that I have this
Mm,
opportunity and I feel responsibility to my family and income generation and all of the things, right? All of the should. So I put all of the things on paper that like look right technically in terms of what we've been conditioned to believe about like what is the right or best thing or responsible thing to do. That's like the shoulds on paper. And then there's like, how do I actually feel
mm,
about this in my body? And to your earlier point, we are told not to feel
yeah.
and not to listen to those messages and to sort of stuff them down or compartmentalize them away or push them away and just keep going. And there were just multiple aspects that came to light for me around the role I was in and where that organization wanted me to focus, which was totally within their right to ask, where I was like, no, I think what you're asking is pushing me even further away from my
Mm,
true fulfillment, which I was getting more and more of a sense of. At this point, I was in my early 40s. I'd been sober for 10 years. I had done a lot of personal development work. And so, to your point about having an understanding of how things feel in my body, that had been a theme throughout my life. I had moved from the fitness industry into my own practices of fitness and yoga and running and breathing and then meditation and like, oh wow, if I look at my whole body and how it's feeling right now, this is maybe just not aligned.
mm,
And that was scary. That was a huge risk. I resigned from that job without a plan purposefully. I did not want
ooh,
to jump into a next job search. We had a few months of savings in Brooklyn with a child and a husband who also has his own business. Like that was a very scary, risky thing on, again, on paper.
right.
But to my body, when I thought about taking that leap, I actually felt more relief than fear. They were both there
Mhm.
together, but it was like, let's call it 60% like excitement and relief and 40% fear. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this leap with my husband's support, had lots of conversations, and I hired coaches because I knew from being sober and from the recovery community and the work I've done in that space, we can do anything with help. But when we're alone, I find the mind gets really stuck in fear based lack belief loops, going back to the list of the shoulds as a
Yep.
place to try to stay safe. Like the mind is always trying to point us to like lowest common denominator safety versus expansive, open curiosity. Let me just try this new thing. And so I knew I would need coaches to help support me through that new process.
And I like that you mentioned that too, because a lot of us as women, we get into the world of business, we have this great idea, we jump in and we're like, I can do it all.
Which we're
And so
also conditioned to believe we're supposed to do it all alone.
yeah, it's all of us. I can do this all. And there's nobody that can do it better than me. I hear that one a lot. Like I'm the only
Always.
one that can do it this way. If I hand it off, it's not gonna get done as good as I can. So there's this sense
Sure.
of controlling the environment and, that sense of having to do it all. And I think when you work with a coach specifically, and I can see this kind of throughout your whole career from ballet to sobriety to in the workplace, we all have mentors and people that we work with because they see us not as how we see ourselves on the inside, right?
Absolutely.
So I've worked with coaches that see a greater version of myself that I then want to rise to, right? As
Totally.
opposed to where I just see myself and I'm totally stuck. So when we talk about, and I love your story for this one and bringing that, your body is saying one thing, you're feeling uncomfortable. Do we, is that more associated with the world of burnout? Is that kind of what leads to that burnout is when we're contradicting what our body is telling us as women? Like we're going, this is what we should be doing, that whole would should thing again. And
Mm-hmm.
then there is this. So is that kind of, and I would say that's even for me, the experience of it's like going against what I intuitively know is what leads to burnout, right? So how do we kind
I
of
think that's a great
limit,
definition.
yeah, how do we limit that or how do we talk about like address that?
So those are the moments I find, right? If we're experiencing that dissonance, right? Like my body is saying one thing, if I were to allow myself or someone were to give me permission to actually articulate my preferences versus what I'm actually tolerating right now, and I look at the difference between those two, oh, like how wide is that gap of what I'm actually experiencing versus what I'd prefer or desire, which are really important words, I think, especially for women to be
Say
given
them again.
permission to articulate your preferences and your desires. Like, what do I actually want?
Yeah.
So, if we're speaking, more specifically to a female audience, if I am the queen of my castle and I get to articulate, define, write out, speak out, capture in whatever way feels like best. It's different for each client I work with how they do this. A Let's just call it a list for ease of like my true preferences in all aspects of life, but let's talk about professionally.
Yeah.
And then I look at that against what I'm currently experiencing. How aligned are those two things? And usually it's pretty clear. Once that's done, it's like, oh, this is oftentimes when people are coming to me, they're realizing there's something that is massively out of alignment. So they're like, oh, wow, if I really look at it from this perspective, like, what do I prefer? What would feel best to my body?
Mhm.
What would be the type of time I would like to have in my life? How often do I want to be working? Where do I want to be working? With whom? What values do they have? What is the modality in which we work? Is that in alignment with my true preferences, how I like to show up? Like if I'm being asked to sit in at a computer all day, but I'm actually better if I'm out in the world, meeting with people in person and moving. Oh, well, my preferences are very different than how I've been conditioned to believe I should be working right now. Well, what if I could go create that? And then that starts to, and that is that like intuitive, oh, it's how it feels in my body. Oh, when I go speak to people in person, I feel lit up, I feel fulfilled, I feel more energy. So yeah, it's an interesting space to speak about because you are quantifying your feeling state and giving that value and weight, which again, for all the reasons we've already discussed, can be like diminished or like, you know, given less weight. And it's like, well, but that's actually super confirming. And then I talk about the word fulfillment a lot. is you
Mm.
start to realize, oh, if I'm actually allowing myself to work in the ways that are more aligned, I feel a greater sense of fulfillment. And that's the piece that I find is missing for most people working in systems and structures and organizations that are not aligned for them, is that there's just like a massive lack of fulfillment.
Yeah.
So that's all extractive. That's an extractive experience. Your work product, your energy is being extracted for the purposes of whatever the system and structure is. And like, if you're not feeling fully aligned and fulfilled in this work, you're not getting any of that energy back. So it's not a regenerative, fulfilling cycle.
It's a soul sucking
It's sucking. Yeah, it just takes.
type of experience. So
Exactly.
let's equate this back to the leap you made.
Sure.
Leaving the corporate, coming into your business. What's it been like for you in since 2017, you're not 8 years in business
8
now.
years. Mm-hmm.
So, what's that journey been like for you in kind of weaving this into your own life
Sure.
as you work with clients? Because even for me, like when I've worked with women, it's like there's a sense of I got to first, not first do it, but like experience it myself. So, were there any times in your starting your business where you kind of wore all the hats, or you were, doing everything, or have you always kind of been looking at how do you balance this and bringing that to those that you work with in the workshops you create?
Sure, sure. Great question. And the first thing I want to be very clear about is when I started working with my coaches, I had zero interest in having my own business.
Oh, okay.
Zero. Like terrified. Like, no, there's no way. So these were the limiting beliefs that I brought with me into my coaching sessions in the
Mm.
first weeks of working with my coaches. I am not creative in my own right. These were words that literally came out of my mouth.
Ooh.
I am a facilitator for those who have creative vision. I'm
Mhm.
great at bringing people, processes, teams together to then bring those creative visions to life. But I do not have creative ideas. I do not have a creative vision. I do not have my own philosophy or point of view. I am just here to, create for others. And so I have a philosophy around that, which was this whole idea of love, like love being missing from business, that we show
Mm.
up, people feel like cogs and wheels. We are here to create profit for shareholders or to create, in the advertising world perspective, materials to then promote the products that then create profit for shareholders. It was just this very, I call it predatory capitalism at this point
Yeah.
approach, and that humans are now subjected to that as like the main focus, and there's no love, humanity, who are we as human beings. So I did have that, and I
Mm.
hadn't yet equated that with having a point of view. I just saw
Interesting.
that as its own little side belief I had, where I worked in these systems and structures, and I kind of like kept that secret. I'd share it with a few people here and there, like, do you feel that you have a sense of love for yourself so that
Mm.
you can then show up with whoever you're sitting across the table from in business and love them from this? And I mean it. And that's where I came to the phrase radical love, because just saying love alone is confusing for people. And people have wild in their own definitions of love, or romanticized or feminized, and that's not what I was talking about. I was really, truly talking about a sense of self. Do you
Mm.
have a true, solid sense of yourself so you can show up and meet somebody else respectfully from that space? And that felt very missing from business.
Interesting.
So then I moved through these coaching sessions and I start dancing again. I hadn't gone to an actual class with a live pianist in a studio taking a ballet class in 20 years, but I had wanted to for 3 years.
Mm.
So my coaches, in some of their process and some of that process I've now learned from, and I work with my clients around, is this idea of like, what is something I've been putting off for a long time that I haven't gone and actually experienced? Because I
Mm.
find coaching is all about experiential learning.
It
Let me
is.
go do the thing. Let me go take the action. And then let me use my intuition, assess how it feels. And does it feel aligned or not?
Mm.
And that gave me some of the new information and permission to see, oh, I am creative. I've been creative. We're all creative. I have been creative in my experience since I was a very young child. I started dancing when I was 3. I was in studios learning dances, performing for 19 years. Like, oh my gosh, of course I'm creative. It just wasn't defined that way in,
Mm.
almost 2 decades in my career, where I felt I was put in a different swim lane. So I just want to be clear about that. Like, my coaches were pretty sure I was going to go into another large organization and like maybe now like a chief talent officer role. Those were some of the roles I was now being approached about
Right.
and interviewing for. So they were like, I don't know what she's going to do, but let's see. And then after time and space away from that world, and for me, it was 1 month fully away, where I was listening to my intuition. I was taking intuitive walks. I was allowing myself to wander. I was asking
Right.
myself what I really preferred. Did I start to see that what my coaches were doing with me, I was taking notes the whole time. And I was seeing how I could apply this with others. And then out of a meditation about a month in, the name came, how I would refer to myself as a founder, coach, consultant, the ways in which my whole career had led me to this, my 12 session program, how I would work with people. Like I literally sat down and just wrote it all out. And I emailed them and I was like, I think I'm going to start my own business. And what? And I was like, I know what. And then the fear came in, and they're like, but do I need to go to a year-long certification program? And we went through all of my past experience and all of my credentials and all of the ways in which I would bring those aspects into my program, which I had already written, at least in headline form. So then I
Right.
started to get into the details, and I was like, no, I literally could do this with somebody tomorrow if somebody
Right.
came my way. And so I just wanted to be very clear about that I did not know I was going to do this. It very much came through the coaching process. And so then I could see, to your point about like learning from doing, the process. It's
Mm.
it's recognizing limiting beliefs. It's going out into the world and having new experiences that potentially challenge or debunk those limiting beliefs quite quickly. Like,
Yep.
oh, I believe this about myself, and then I just went and did this thing, and I see that that's not true. Oh, that's possible. And then planned to start this business. And then all of the hyper perfectionism and the competition based concerns, and like everybody, it seemed at the time, was becoming coaches. There's still lots of people moving into the coaching world all the time. And so
Mm.
they're like, well, what about them? And they're doing it. And am I enough? So those fears came in. So I want to be very honest about that. And then I went on a vacation for 3 weeks, which I highly recommend when you've come up with a new idea, is to pause and
Yes.
go chill and let it percolate and see how you feel about it when you come back. And I was more excited than ever. And then to your question earlier about like help and not doing all the things, I started, I think because of my experience in recovery, knew that that is not a great space for me to be, like thinking I have to
The
control
echoes are showing.
everything.
There we go.
Are we back?
Yep. There we go.
Okay, great. I realized I don't want to control everything.
Mm.
I don't want to play every role. I'm not good at every role. I need financial expertise. I would need, of course, somebody to create my brand identity and my website. But I know people, and I can reach out to people, and I can humbly. And humility is a huge part of this. I can humbly, but with ease, in that humility, say I don't know how to do these things, and I don't prefer. So this goes
Right.
back to the intuition. I've become aware of my preferred modalities, working with clients, having conversations, moving people through these experiences. I really love an hour-long conversation. Like that is my preferred modality. So I can have other people do these other components that they love. So I hired a financial advisor, and she gave me some of the, and that's scary, right? I was not generating an income. I was building this idea, but it hadn't started yet. And now I'm going to pay somebody thousands of dollars. But yes, because I did it with my coaches and it was working. And
Yeah.
then because it's unlocking all of these places where I was stuck on my own, right? So bringing in outside inspiration, it's just these ideas that we really want and the life we prefer, I find is in our peripheral vision.
Mm.
It is
It is.
not far away, but we generally have blinders on, understandably, because of the way we've been living in patterned beliefs and behaviors and thinking. So when we bring outside inspiration in, those blinders open just a bit, and it's like, oh my God, the thing I want to do is right here.
Yeah.
And my financial advisor said, Benita, all you need, because she has her own business as a female financial advisor, she said, all you need to do is go register your business with the county clerk's office and open a bank account. That's all you need to start. You need a way for people to pay you.
Yep.
That's it.
Step one, get paid.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Because my marketing mind wanted to make the perfect website and have the perfect copy and have a social media marketing plan. And my intuition was like, no, I don't want to hyper perfectionize all of that stuff. That would ruin this for me. And so it was very fun actually doing the opposite. There was a bit
Mm,
of rebellion in that. There was a lot of being true to myself. So that's how it, like, I came back from this vacation. I met with her. I literally went to the county clerk's office because their office was not far away. I then went to the bank down the street, and I was like, that's what I've also learned is take inspired action as quickly as you can.
yeah.
If you're in a mode where you're like, oh, I just got some advice that feels really right, and I'm actually feeling good about this, I'm going to go take the actions. That creates a particular type of rhythm and
Activity is
momentum.
there.
Yeah, super powerful.
Mm.
Are we back?
I am either dropping or we're having internet issues on our side.
No worries. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good. So
Okay,
you talked about
great.
taking the action, getting into that space. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck back in our own head as women is that I think it, but then every self-doubt, every possible negative thought comes right in, like ripping through right after that. Like I've had that same kind of mindset that happens. Like, I got a great idea. I'm like, yeah, but who am I? That whole thing,
Exactly.
who am I to be the one to do this? Like, there's people better than me out there that can be in this conversation. I have gone through that probably over the last 15 years a couple of times as we move through business. So, yeah.
Totally. The enoughness piece really comes in, right? And worrying about competitors and all of that. And I had multiple people say to me, especially in this line of work, which is so, you're so much a reflection of your own specific, unique life experiences and the approach that you bring that like nobody's going to do it exactly the way I would do it. And my brand is unique to me for those reasons. And that was like
Right.
enough to quiet that one. Like there were just, but it comes back to people having other support people in my life that could then help move me through those moments of fear and feeling uncertain and not enough. And so I launched the business with the bank account and I had the name, of course, and was working on a website, was working on the copy and language about how I wanted to communicate it, was posting along the way in this process. So there was this really organic, like I was posting the story of this evolution and people were following that. And within 2 weeks, I had my first two clients of just being out in the world talking to people. Again, no website, no marketing. And from there, it just continued to grow. And then like a month later, I launched the website and had all my documentation clear and in place and had a real clear process of how I was working with people. And it's just grown from there. I have been so grateful to work with, as you mentioned in my bio, a really diverse range of people in all ways across the world, which is just such an honor. And it has been, to answer your question about like focusing on the flow, which is the word I really like to use rather than balance. I find balance for me um like ticks a perfectionism box in my mind in terms of meaning. So I stay away from the word balance as much as I can. So I try to and do really quite successfully work within this idea of flow. So from very early on, again, when I wrote up my preferences of how I would prefer my day to look and flow and move, I knew I wanted to work about 20 hours a week
Okay.
out of the gate. I was like, I want that would feel great. And then know that I have time to pick up my son after school some days and hang out with him more often and have more freedom in my schedule. So I built out my business plan, which I put in air quotes for those who obviously can't see me. That was very loose and very much of in an outline form, but like I would need to work with these types of clients for this amount of time at this rate to generate this type of income for it to be a self-sustaining proposition for me and my family. And I did the numbers and I was like, oh, this works. And it worked particularly well when we moved out of New York City. So that's one of those like total life value choices we made. Well, if I
Mhm.
move out of New York City, then I don't have to grind.
Yeah.
And I don't want to grind in this business ever. And I have not. And whenever I feel the pull to do something that feels grindy and graspy and pushy, I pause and I don't take that action because again, from an intuitive place, that feels from fear. That feels like it's coming from a lack belief. That feels like it's coming from I feel afraid about something, and so I'm going to grasp. I'm going to take an action. It feels icky, and that description, right? Not very scientific, but very real.
Yeah.
Anybody who's listening knows that feeling when you're like, I'm about to take an action or take a course or do something that I feel like I should and it feels icky, my action step to myself in those moments is to not take that action. Pause, rest, wait for a new moment of inspiration, and then take the action that feels like it's got that ease, that confirming. Um, Relief is a great word. When you feel relief in your body and excitement, that's a yes. When you feel that contraction and that ick, it's usually a no.
I love how you kind of brought that together because in terms of having to do it all, the as women, I find that we do well with collaboration. That's why
Yeah.
I like when you say coaches are out there that are listening in because that's part of your collaborative team. And then as you were designing and building your business, you recognize I don't want to be building the website. I don't want to be doing this. Like, and in the beginning, there's the sense of just being your authentic voice as you're kind of bringing on this business online as you're, shifting and changing what it is. And I think that organic, that flow that you're talking about is really what a lot of us women want. We just don't know how to get there, kind of a thing. But I think
Yep.
that throughout this entire conversation, it starts with your intuition, ladies. Just like Benita
Yep.
said, it starts with your intuition. It starts with you getting back into your body and feeling the feelings. And then knowing that you're always supported in that. And it might not
Yeah.
seem like you have the support around you right now, but I will tell you, like Benita said, open the blinders a little bit. Go hire a coach, go out and network with some extraordinary individuals, get
Yes.
out there and have and create those new experiences. Go back to something you love, like Benita did with ballet. She's like, I took my first class in 20 years. Like, if there's a soul calling for you, for something for you to do, then, like Benita said, go take the immediate action. Don't let it stew, don't let it wait, but go and do that which lights you up because that's the juice.
It is.
That's the piece behind it.
And that's the piece that I find develops a more solid, content, stable, trusted sense of self.
Yeah.
Because when we're not listening to our intuition, and so we're doing things based on basically what other people have done and other people have said to do, I find it's usually we're operating from a lot of projection of others onto us, and we're
Yeah.
trying to do it, or what we've seen other people model in their lives, but maybe that's not totally right for us. When we start to let go of that, then we're saying yes to ourselves. And the
Mm,
more we do that, and not in a selfish way, we need to do this with an integrity and alignment with our other relationships and obligations that do feel alignment, that do feel aligned in our lives. So through a lens of integrity, but more often choosing what feels right for us, which takes like some leaps of faith and trust, well, then we're honoring ourselves.
yeah.
And the more you honor yourself, the more that might be maybe is creating some healthy boundaries, is feeling actually quite empowering. And then you realize, oh, I trust myself with
Mhm.
myself. And that's the component I found working in other systems and structures that weren't aligned is I questioned myself all the time. And that creates anxiety and depression and exhaustion and burnout.
Agree. So, how does somebody contact you and get to work with you? I have probably a few listeners out here I know that are sitting here going, Benita's like speaking my love language over here. And I'd be curious, how they can connect with you. So, what's one of the best ways that they can follow you, connect with you, or even have an opportunity to get on your calendar?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is createradical.love.com. And there's multiple places on there that you can just quick get to my contact page and send me a note. I offer a free 45-minute to 60-minute. I find I need that time to get to know someone and for them to get to know me, consultation call. So reach out. Happy to have a conversation. Love to have a consultation call. And I find that it's really clear pretty quickly if we're aligned or we're not. And that's
Yeah.
totally great either way.
And everything she just mentioned will be down in the show notes. So wherever you're listening from, those are going to be in the show notes. The link to her website, how to contact her, and even how to follow her on social media. Because
Yes.
sometimes we just want to stalk people, and I know it's the terrible word to use, but sometimes following them, getting a sense of who they are, and then when you're ready to make that move, definitely reach out to Benita and say, "Hey, let's have a chat." Because I think what she brings to the world is invaluable, and her experiences and the ability for intuition, movement, radical love of self through everything you're doing in life really honestly follow along, follow her, and connect with her if she resonates with you here on today's episode of Did She Really Say That? So I thank you all for joining me. Benita, thank you so much for being a guest with us, and I look forward to our connection.
Thank you.